Hey guys, today we're going to start reviewing everything from Unit 10, which was all about conic sections. You should have picked up a paper that looks like this, where it has kind of all the information that you need for each of these conic sections. Now we're going to go in order that they are here. So we're going to start with circles, go to ellipse, hyperbola, and then parabola. So to start with circles, first you need to know how to graph them. So they give us the equation x plus 4 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 16. The numbers inside of the parentheses correspond with the center of the circle. You just have to be careful because it is the opposite sign that you see. So I know it says plus 4, but your center is actually going to be at negative 4. And then it says minus 3, but it'll be positive 3. That's the center. So I'm going to go ahead and graph that, which would be right here. And then the other important number is whatever it is equal to. So since this one equals to 16, that is r squared. We need to know what just regular r is. So if we square root both sides, that would be 4. So that's going to be the radius of our circle. So starting from the center, you want to go 4 units in all 4 directions. So 1, 2, 3, 4 to the left, 4 up, 4 right, and 4 down, and then use those points to help you draw your circle. So something like that. So of course on your test it's going to be better because it'll be a printed picture, but you get the idea. The next one is now we need to be able to write the equation of a circle. So we're always going to use the one that was on the reference sheet there, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So we need to find the center and the radius. Once we have those two things, then we could just plug it into the formula. So they give us the endpoints of the diameter. So if you picture this in your head, here's our circle. They gave us this point, negative 2, 7, and this point here, positive 4, negative 1, and that's the diameter of the circle. So the first thing that we need to find is the center. So center is going to be exactly halfway between those 2 points. So to find midpoint, so we're going to label these points x1, y1, x2, y2. To find midpoint, you add up your x's and divide by 2, and then you add up your y's and divide by 2. So for us, that's going to be negative 2 plus 4 over 2, and 7 plus negative 1 over 2. And when you do that math, you should get 1, 3. So that's our center. That is our HK when we need to plug it in later. The other thing that we need to find is radius. So radius would be the distance from the center to either one of the edges. You can use whichever one that you want. But for this, we're going to use our distance formula, which is the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. So remember, we're going to use one of our points. So since I used x1, I'm going to use this one right here, the 4, negative 1. But we're also finding the distance from the center. So that HK, we're going to consider that our x1, y1. So I kind of write my skeleton first. HK needs to be the first thing, so 1 and 3, so 1 in each set of parentheses. Then we're going to subtract that point on the diameter, so 4, negative 1. So you can type this whole thing into the calculator all at once, but when you put this in the calculator, you should get 5. So that means that our radius is 5. And now we just have to plug that into the formula of a circle. So this will be x minus h, so it's going to be minus 1 squared, plus y minus k, so y minus 3 squared, equals r squared. So you have to get that 5 and square it, so it's going to be 25. Okay, and then this one right here says write this circle equation in standard form. So to be in standard form, it has to look like what we just finished writing over here with the parentheses and the squares. This one doesn't have that. So we have to rearrange first. Anything that has an x, let's put that next to each other. So it's going to be x squared minus 8x. And then anything that has a y, let's group that together. So actually first, I'm going to put a blank here. And then let's put our y's. So plus y squared plus 6y plus blank. And then equals 11. So we need to figure out what goes in these blanks. So we're going to do that by completing the square. The number to remember here is b over 2, and then raised up to the second power. B is whatever number is in front of the variable that has the first power. So for our x's, negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4, but when you square that, that's 16. What you add to one side, you also have to add to the other side of the equation just to keep everything equal. Okay, let's do the same thing with the y's. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 3 squared is 9, so we're going to add 9. And again, we have to do that to the other side as well. Then you can factor each one of these trinomials, like each one is its own. So you could do your whole like t chart and a times c, but the shortcut really is, this is x. Whatever number is in the middle where I put my arrow, just half of that. So half of negative 8 is negative 4. That's what's going to go inside your parentheses. And same thing for our y's here. Half of 6 is 3, so we're going to have plus 3. And then equals, just add all these numbers up. 11 plus 16 plus 9 gives us 36. So that's the circle equation in standard form. Okay, so now moving on to our next conic section, we started talking about ellipses. Ellipses are just stretched out circles, so they're ovals. So first one here says to just graph the ellipse. It starts off the same way. Your center is the numbers that are inside of the parentheses. So for us, our center is going to be at positive 1, positive 5. So right here. Okay, but the thing with ellipse or ovals, it matters which direction you draw this. It could be horizontal or it can be vertical. So you're going to look at your denominators, and whichever one is bigger, so between 16 and 4, 16 is bigger, that's underneath x. X controls the horizontal axis, so this is going to be a horizontal ellipse. So to find our vertices, that 16 actually represents a squared. So if I square root that, a is 4. So from our center, we need to go 4 units away in either direction. And because it's horizontal, that means left and right. So 4 to the left and 4 to the right. The other denominator is b squared. So b squared is 4, which means that regular b is 2. That helps us find our co-vertices. So since we already did horizontal, we're going to do vertical, 2 up, 2 down. And then you could just connect all of those points. Should be pretty much oval shaped. Something like that. Okay, let's look at our next one. What is the equation of the ellipse with vertices at negative 5, 3, and 3, 3 with a minor axis that has a length of 6? So remember, vertices control the major axis, and the major axis tells you which direction your ellipse is going. The minor axis controls co-vertices, so that's going to be the opposite. So first thing that we need to find is the center. Center will just be the midpoint of the two vertices. I mean, you can tell from the picture we drew over here, center is right in the middle of the two vertices. So same thing here, just without the picture. So we need to find halfway between those 2 points. So we add our x values, -5 plus 3, and divide by 2. Then add our y values, 3 plus 3, divide by 2. So that gives us -1, +3. That is our center, HK. Okay, then we need to find our A value and our B value. That way we know what to put as our denominators. So to find A, that's going to be the distance from the center that we just found to one of the vertices. It doesn't matter which one. So center that we just found, and I'm going to use the second one, 3, 3. I just feel like it's easier. So notice that the y values, they don't change. The only thing that's changing is the x. See, the y's are the same. So x is really the only thing that's going to control distance. So how many units is it from 3 to -1? So all you have to do is take the absolute value of subtracting those two numbers. So -1 minus 3. That's -4, but when you take the absolute value, that's just +4. So that means that A is 4, and we're actually going to need A squared, so A squared is 16. Last thing we need is B. B is going to go with the minor axis. Specifically, it's half the minor axis. So they told us that the minor axis was 6. Half of 6 is 3. B is 3. B squared is 9. So the last thing left is we need to know what direction this is going in. Is it horizontal or is it vertical? So when you look at the vertices, that's the one that controls the major axis. Y is staying the same. X is changing, so I'm going to put delta X. X is changing. So that means that this is horizontal. Horizontal major axis, so it's a horizontal ellipse. So now we just got to put everything all together. So start by x minus h, but since it's minus negative, it'll be +1. And since it's horizontal, the bigger number has to be underneath this one. So between 16 and 9, 16 is bigger. Plus y minus k, so y minus 3 squared, has to be over 9, always equals 1. Okay, and then this next one says find the direction and center of the given ellipse. So honestly, if it was in standard form, this would be super easy. It would take us 5 seconds, but this is not in standard form, so we're gonna have to complete the square first, and then we can identify our attributes. But it's similar to the one that we did before. Group your x's, group your y's. So this will be 9x squared plus 36x, and then plus 4y squared minus 32y equals 224. But you'll notice this time around, these have leading coefficients, and I don't want that. So with the blue part, the part with the x's, I'm going to divide both of those by 9, which gives me x squared plus 4x, and then I'm going to leave a blank here. Then for the green part, the y's, I'm going to divide by 4, which leaves me with y squared minus 8y plus blank equals 224. So now we can complete the square and figure out what goes in those blanks. Here we would have 4 divided by 2 is 2, but then squared goes back to 4. So we're going to add 4 here. But what we add on one side, we have to add to the other. But this is not just a regular 4, it's a 9 times 4. So we need to add 36. Then for our y's, that's -8 divided by 2 is -4. Squared is 16. And same thing, we have to add it to the other side, but it's really 4 times 16. So we need to add 64. Now we can factor these. This will become x plus 2 squared and y minus 4 squared equals 324. So we're almost there. The only thing that's missing is that, or not missing, but wrong, is that they still have those leading coefficients. And it's supposed to equal 1 all the time. So to fix that, let's divide everything by 324. And then simplify as much as we can. Okay, so it ends up being x plus 2 squared over 36 plus y minus 4 squared over 81 equals 1. So there's our equation. But they're asking us to identify the direction. So for direction, you look at your denominators. And between 36 and 81, 81 is definitely bigger. And that's underneath y. Y controls the vertical axis. So this is going to be a vertical ellipse. And then it says they also want us to identify the center. That comes from the numbers here. I know it says plus 2, but it's actually going to be negative and then 4. So that's our center. Now let's move on to our next shape, which is hyperbolas. This one says graph the hyperbola and identify the center vertices and co-vertices. So with ellipse, we would look at the denominator and that would tell us which direction it was going in, whichever number was bigger. For hyperbola, that rule does not apply anymore. So it doesn't matter which denominator is bigger. What you're looking for is what letter they used first. So between x and y, they used x first. So that means that this is going to be a horizontal hyperbola. HK for center still works the same. It's the numbers inside the parentheses. So this will be -2, +3. Our A value is always going to be the first number. It doesn't matter if it's bigger or smaller. That's always A. So A squared equals 4, so regular A equals 2. We established that this one is horizontal, so starting from that center, we're going to go 2 to the left, 2 to the right. Those are the vertices. So it said to identify them. They ended up being at -4, 3 and at 0, 3. Then the next denominator, that's b squared. So that means that b has to be 3. So since we already did horizontal, we would have to go vertical this time. So 3 up, 3 down. So the co-vertices are those green points. So -2, 6 and -2, 0. Now, this is a hyperbola. It's kind of like two parabolas. And we said it's horizontal, so it is going to make kind of an H shape. So it's going to go something like this. Has to go through the vertices, just like that. So it is important that you identify these points here, the vertices and co-vertices, because I know that's one of the questions on the test. Okay, so we have another one exactly like this. They want us to graph and identify the attributes. So this time around, if you look at your equation, y came first. So that means that this one is going to be a vertical hyperbola. The center still goes around these two numbers here, but just be careful, it is mixed up. Remember that points are always x comma y. So since x is over here on this side, that is our h value. So our center is at 1, -4. And then, like I said before, it doesn't matter which one is bigger. The first denominator is always going to be a squared. So that means that a is 2. And since this is a vertical hyperbola this time, we're going to go 2 up and 2 down. So those are our vertices. That's 1, -2, and 1, -6. Then b is going to be the second denominator. B squared is 16, so b must be 4. So this time we're going to go left and right. So the co-vertices are at -3, -4, and 5, -4. Okay, and then we already established that this one is a vertical hyperbola. So at the vertex, it needs to make parabola shapes at each vertex. That's what it would look like. The next one, it's already been graphed for us, so there's our picture, but they want us to write the equation that goes with it. So you need to find the center. Then we need to find A, and we need to find B. So center, most of the time you can basically eyeball it. It's going to be right here. Also notice that there is a rectangle with dotted lines. It's imaginary, it's not actually there, but that's to help you find the center. So if that's our center, that's at -4, -1. Okay, then we need to find A and B. So this hyperbola is horizontal. So when you find A, you need to go either left or right from the center. So from the center, going to the left, I'm sorry, right, that's A, and that is 2. Then B would be opposite of what your direction is. So if it's a horizontal hyperbola, B is going to go vertical. And when I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, B is 5. Okay, so now we just got to put all this stuff together. For the equation, you need A squared, so that's going to be 4, and B squared, that's 25. Horizontal starts with the x, so we'll have x plus 4 squared over 4 minus y plus 1 squared over 25 always equals 1. And that's our equation. Okay, and then our last conic section was parabolas. So starting off with just a picture, it says, what is the equation of the parabola below? So you need to know 2 things. You need to know the vertex, and you need to know P. So vertex, again, this is one of those things that just looking at the picture, you can basically eyeball it. So vertex is at 2, -3. Now P is the distance from the vertex either to the directrix, so right here, or it would have been up to the focus, which is here. So it kind of depends on which one they give you. But either way, P is 2. Now this parabola is vertical. So the format we follow for this is x minus h squared equals 4p y minus k. The other thing to point out is that this parabola is pointing up. I know there's no arrows, but it is opening up. So that means that it's going to be positive. So this 4p right here, it's going to be positive. So if I just plug everything in, x minus 2 squared equals 4p. We know that p is 2, so 4p would be 8. Y plus 3. Okay, our next one What is the equation of the parabola with a vertex at 4, 1 and a directrix at x equals 11 halves? Honestly, number 10 and number 11, they are basically exactly the same thing. It's just 10, they were nice and they gave you a picture, and 11, they just gave you the points. But, so vertex is HK. I would suggest actually drawing this out so you know better what exactly is happening. So 4, 1, they're both positive numbers. That means that this is going to be in quadrant 1. So I'm going to estimate something like that. X equals 11 halves. So I know we think better in decimals. 11 halves is roughly 5.5. And because it's X, this is going to be a vertical line. So remember that this point, the vertex that we just drew, that was 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So our directrix, 5 and then a little bit past that, would be going like this. So directrix is always on the outside of the parabola. So that means that our parabola is something pointing this direction. Okay, so that tells us a lot of information. So first off, this is a horizontal parabola. And it's pointing to the left. See that? So that means that it's going to be negative. Okay, then we already know the vertex is at HK. The next thing we need to find is P, but P is going to be this distance right here. So we need to know how far away it is from 4, so remember that was 4, to 5.5 or 11 halves. This was 5.5, so that's 1.5. Now I like it better as a fraction, so I'm going to say that it's 3/2. But that's just absolute value. When you do 4p, you're going to multiply by 4. So that'd be 12 halves, which is basically 6. But because it's opening up to the left, I know that it needs to be negative. So now we're just going to put everything all together. For a horizontal parabola, it starts with y minus k squared equals 4p x minus h. Let's just put everything that needs to go where it goes. So y minus k is 1. 4p is negative 6. Parentheses x minus 4. Okay, and then last one. It says graph the parabola and identify the vertex, focus, and directrix. So obviously I forgot to put the equation, so let's come up with an equation here. Let's say x minus 1 squared equals negative 4 y minus 3. So starting with the vertex, that'll be the numbers inside of the parentheses. But remember, I'm going to change this to a plus. But remember that it's opposite of what you see. So this vertex is going to be negative 1, positive 3. Also remember that x always goes first in the point, so that 1 had to go first. Sometimes these are backwards, so just be very careful of that. So 1, negative 1, 3 is here. Okay, then we need to figure out what P is, because that's what's going to tell us how far away to do the focus and directrix. In the equation, the number that's right before the parentheses is 4p. So if 4p equals negative 4, that means that regular p is going to be negative 1. I just divided both sides by 4. We want the absolute value of that, so that would just be 1. So we need to go from this vertex 1 in both directions to get our directrix and our focus, but should we go up and down or should we go left and right? So looking at the equation, whenever x comes first, this is going to be a vertical parabola. Specifically because this part is negative, it's going to be pointing down. So when we do our distance from P, we're going to go one up and one down because of vertical. Now, because I know that this parabola is going to point down, that means that this part is going to be the focus. So focus is at -1, 2. The directrix is going to be on the other side, only it's not a point, it's a line. So it's going through the 4, but you have to be careful. Is it x equals 4 or y equals 4? Since this is horizontal, it's y equals 4. And now that we have those two things, we can draw in our parabola, something like that. Okay, guys, and that's everything that's going to be on the test. I know this ended up being kind of a long review, but it's because I was trying to explain everything that I possibly could. The test is really, really similar to this. It is 12 questions, just like this review. It goes in order, so it'll be circles, ellipses, hyperbolas, then parabolas. These are not the exact questions. I did change it a little bit, but this review should help you a lot for the test that we are taking tomorrow on Friday. All right, bye, everyone.